Have you wondered what's going on with housing prices and interest rates lately? Are houses even affordable anymore? Stick around because I'm going to start off this month by talking about housing affordability over the past 40 years. Hey everyone, it's Connor MacDougall. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and that bell for notifications when I release new content about living in Tri-Cities, Washington. And as always, if you're looking to buy or sell a house or have any questions, reach out to me in the contact info in the description below. All right, so I promised I was going to talk about housing affordability over the last 40 years, and I'm not going to string you along. Let's get right into it now. So this graph that I'm showing right now shows a few different things. One, it shows the median household income since 1984 right up until current, kind of end of 2022 now. It also shows the average home price during that time, and it also shows the interest rates. And what I've been able to do is calculate on this graph what the affordable house is for that median household income with those given interest rates at each year in time along the way. So the dotted black line at the bottom is that median household income I talked about. And yes, it's worth noting that over time, women traditionally used to be stay-at-home moms and wives. And over time, there's been a lot more transition to two-income households. But so that has contributed to the median household income going up over time, but wages have also gone up over time as well. The next line you see is like a dark blue line, and that is the price or how much house you can afford with that median household income and those interest rates at the time the house was purchased. The gold line, again, up there is the average home price at that time, and then the gray line is the interest rates throughout the years. So what you can see if we look at the start of the graph is obviously wages were a lot lower than they used to be, the median household wages. Housing prices were obviously lower than they are now as well. So in 1984, median household income was $22,000 and the average home price was just under $80,000. Now, because the interest rates were so high at that time in the early 80s, almost 14% at that point, the median affordable home, or the home someone could afford on that median household income, was actually only $65,800, which means that back then, houses were actually less affordable than what we've seen in recent years. This is important to note because for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been kind of 18 or older, I've heard people talk about, oh, boomers talk about their high interest rates, but their houses also cost $20,000 and they don't know what it's like with our houses costing as much as they do. Well, what we can look at here is from that period from 2008 up until the start of 2021, houses were actually more affordable for our generation than they were for the people back in the 80s when those interest rates were high. So I was one of those people, I'm guilty of it. I ragged on the boomers about how they had these really cheap homes, and so the high interest rates didn't matter as much because they could afford more house than we could. But that's not necessarily true. They had to work just as hard. They at times could afford a lot less than they wanted to, but made it work or bought homes that were less than what they would have liked to move into. So that's a major component I wanted to talk about. Another factor is as we look at how much houses have appreciated over time and compared to how much the median income has gone up, there's a gap there. So if you look at the graph below, you see that median household income has gone to about $78,000 in the US from $22,000 in the last 38 years. So that's an increase of 348%. And when we look at the housing appreciation that we've seen in that time, going from just about $80,000 all the way up to over $450,000, that's a 570% increase. So you might be wondering, where the heck did that extra 221% go? Like, how are people able to afford these homes, and where are they getting the extra money? Now, there's outside influences that obviously come into play. They could be inheriting money. Bottom line is how the housing market appreciated so much more than the median income is through the lowering of interest rates over time. And so what you'll see is back in 1984, when interest rates were almost 14%, that's a major reason that the people back then couldn't basically afford the average price of homes. But over the years, you see that gray line has steadily been going downhill all the way up until basically into 2020, at the point where we were seeing interest rates below 3%, which is unheard of. I don't know if we'll ever see a 30-year fixed rate mortgage be in the threes again, let alone in the twos like it was. People were getting like 2.65 with no points at one time. So yeah, that was extremely low interest rates. And because those interest rates kept steadily declining, that allowed the appreciation of homes to go up because people could continue to afford more house, not just with their increases in salary, but also with that decrease in interest rates. Now, this all began to change as the pandemic was coming to kind of a close, or things were starting to get back to normal, and the Fed decided that they really needed to start raising the federal funds rate. And because they decided to start raising the federal funds rate, basically everyone else started raising their rates as well. So that's the 10-year treasury bond, that's all the mortgages, that's the financing you get for buying a car. Everything starts to go up with that federal funds rate. So that's when the rate started to really increase rapidly, because inflation was getting out of control, and the Fed decided they needed to be aggressive in order to get inflation back to their target of 2%. So what we've seen in 2022 is the largest or the most rapid increase in lending rates in the history. And what that has caused is it's caused basically that line to flip. That blue line is now below that gold line. And what that means is that it's no longer realistic for the median household income to afford the average home in the US. And it's not by a little bit, it's pretty significant. We're looking at about $75,000 or so gap between those two at the moment. So that means that there's a significant gap between what people can afford right now with their incomes and what the housing market is at because of all that appreciation, due in part to low interest rates as well as inflation and whatnot. So there's some validity to the people saying, how can people afford houses? This is crazy. The houses are so expensive. I think they are not as expensive as some people think. We've gone through a period, especially kind of in the 2018 to 2021 phase, where houses were extremely affordable. And if you weren't able to purchase a home in that time, that's unfortunate, because that was a period where you could get extremely low interest rates and the houses hadn't totally skyrocketed in value yet. But that's where we're at right now. What this means is one of two things that have got to happen. People who really need to sell their homes are going to have to lower their prices and take less money in order for the buyers to be able to afford what they're looking for. Or buyers are going to have to look at homes in a lower price range than what they wanted. That means that you're going to get less. Like if you wanted 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and a 3-car garage, maybe you're getting 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a 2-car garage with a smaller lot. That's decisions that everyone has to make for themselves. That's not something that I can advise on. What I can say right now about the market is that people selling their houses are obviously willing to either reduce the prices right now, a lot of them, or to give buyer incentives, whether that's in the way of money towards closing costs, whether they're contributing money towards interest rate buy downs or limited buy downs. A lot of the lenders are coming out with better programs for people to purchase homes, as far as offering better interest rates, adjustable rate mortgages that are a lot more manageable in the first kind of 5 to 7 years before they do an adjustment. I think I've talked enough about affordability. I'm going to move on to the rest of the monthly report here for those who are looking for the stats specifically for Tri-Cities. If you have any questions about the affordability or have any kind of other points you want to bring up, please feel free. I do understand other things like cost of student loans and education. There's other things that have gone up in price that make it harder to afford homes. So that's not lost on me. I just wanted to kind of do this simplified breakdown to show people that there were times in the 80s where houses were less affordable than what we've seen for the past decade. So one positive note we can talk about is that interest rates have started to come down. This was triggered when the most recent, I believe it was the November CPI report came out that showed better inflation numbers than were expected and kind of showed that inflation was starting to come down. And we've seen kind of 2 or 3 weeks in a row where interest rates have either stayed steady or started to drop. So we were above 7% about a month ago, and now we're about 6.5% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I've heard of some banks in town in the Tri-Cities right now that are actually offering a 5.25% 30-year fixed rate mortgage with 3% or 3 points paid towards the buy down of that rate. So yeah, you are having to buy the rate down, but that's a pretty good rate for 30 years, given what we've been seeing recently and what historically the averages have been. Inventory in the Tri-Cities is starting to plateau. We're just above that 700 level for kind of Tri and all the surrounding areas. What is interesting and something that I flagged this month when I was going through my numbers is that Pasco inventory has absolutely skyrocketed. Here's the numbers we can see for all the cities or all the areas that are not Pasco. I basically removed the Pasco numbers, and you can see that we haven't actually surpassed the inventory numbers that we saw in 2019. So although inventory's gotten back to what a more healthy level, it hasn't actually gotten above the levels that we saw pre-COVID. But when we look at the Pasco inventory, you can see from the start of the year till now, Pasco inventory is up about 450%. So in January, there were only 38 homes for sale on the market in Pasco, and now there's almost 180. So that is a huge increase. And so you look at kind of where Tri-City, like the rest of Tri-Cities or in the non-Pasco cities were, kind of following close to where the 2019 numbers were. Compared to where Pasco is, they've just completely shot through the roof and separated themselves from anything we've seen in the past 5 years or so as far as the Pasco inventory goes. So what does that mean? If you're a buyer in Pasco, this is a great time because there's lots on the market, there's lots available, and you have a better position as far as negotiations because there's a lot of other houses out there that you can make offers on. When we're looking at the average price or the sale price for Pasco, you might think that because inventory is so high and the days on market have gone up, that you would see the average sales price fall, but it's actually held pretty steady. Which again, that means it's a good thing for the sellers too, because just because there's a lot of homes out there, that hasn't knocked the value of the homes down significantly. So houses are still selling for around the same price, like they're holding their value pretty well, but there's also a lot more inventory and a lot more selection for the buyers. And then when we look at the average days on market in Pasco, again, they've gone up significantly, or the median days on market, I'm sorry, but they're not above, or it's again not affecting the average sales price. The average sales price still seems to be holding pretty level. So stuff staying on the market longer, the market's slowing down, but it's not plummeting like you might expect when you see the inventory and the days on market rise. So one thing we have seen decrease a lot is the houses sold and the total volume of home sales in the market. As you can see, all 4 cities are seeing a decrease and a downward trend compared to previous years. This is due in a large part to the decrease in new construction purchases. So those new construction homes looked really great when the interest rates were low and when people could afford to maybe spend a little bit more or get something newer than they were expecting. But now that the interest rates are up, there's a lot of homes that are sitting there waiting and a lot of new construction homes that have been sitting on market longer than they're used to. So obviously the new construction numbers are way down, and the resale numbers as well are down. So market has slowed down. That's normal for this time of year anyway, and especially coming off the hot years that we have, we were due to see the market slow once those interest rates rised. So I wouldn't say it's anything to panic about. Most important part is if people still have their jobs, if they still have their livelihoods and they're able to pay their mortgages, I wouldn't say you have to worry about a crash, because without the foreclosures and a mad sell-off, there's not really anything driving people to sell to drive the price down. This is a little bit different than I've done previously. One thing I should mention too is I did change the way I've been calculating average sales price. Previously, I was just pulling the previous month and averaging out the sales price. What I've actually started to do though is do a 90-day average, and this is in the hopes that it kind of helps level off some of those peaks and valleys that we usually see, because we'll see months that are $40,000 apart on average sales price for a city, or so that's not realistic. It's not like houses have gone up and down $40,000 in that one month. So what I'm trying to do there is just basically level the data a little bit and clean it up so that it's kind of shows a more complete picture and a more accurate depiction of the sales price, rather than maybe a month with some highs and some lows. I hope this was helpful to anyone who is interested in the Tri-City housing market. If it was, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications when I release new videos. I enjoy putting out, especially this data-centered stuff with my engineering background. I really like getting into the data and the analytics and the trends behind the housing market. So if you have any questions on that stuff, please feel free to message me. There's a lot more data I have access to. It's just whatever you want to see. I just need to know what I can put together that's going to help you in your search and figuring out the market. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to reach out, and I'll see y'all again next time.